Yo, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel for a brand new video. In the spirit of roster mania, today we're going to be talking about roster moves, but we are not talking about roster moves for next year. Instead, we're looking back at last year and talking about some of the worst possible roster moves we saw during the 2021 CDL season. If you enjoy the video, let me know by leaving a like down below, and definitely leave a comment as well with your thoughts on the worst roster move of the 2021 CDL season, and also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one from me in the future. I appreciate all of your support so very much, and let's hop right into the video. Starting us off, we have Alex for Zed. I'm not even sure when this happened, but I know it was a bad move for the London Royal Ravens because if you don't remember, London actually had a little bit of success. I think it was either stage 2 or stage 3. They got top 8 at the major, which was their best placement of the season. They'd only got top 10 or top 12 every other time, but they were coming off a top 8 with Zed in there. And then Alex comes back and replaces Zed. And Alex was not even playing Call of Duty. He was out of their lineup. He wasn't playing challengers. He had like personal issues or something, and he was just not playing COD. Then he comes back and he struggled big time, as you see by the stats on screen. His numbers were terrible. They were worse than Zed's, and Zed's not known for being a guy who puts up big numbers. He's supposed to be the guy who sort of makes the ratty play. He's a very ratty player. He's the glue of the team. He plays smart. He does all that stuff, but he's not a slayer. Alex is supposed to be a slayer, and his slaying numbers were terrible, and the team was terrible when he was in there. And what's even crazier is they had their success with Zed before Afro was even in the lineup. So if they would have had Afro and Zed together, they probably could have made even better plays. They could have been top 8 again because Afro, we all know he was just absolutely frying when he was in there, but Zed never got to play with him. I would have really liked to see Zed and Afro play together. I think Zed could have been the perfect guy to pair with Afro. Let Zed focus on making the plays, doing the dirty work, being rowdy or whatever else, and just let Afro go out and just get as many engagements as possible and get a lot of kills, but he couldn't do that. He was trying to do everything because Alex was just giving him nothing basically, and the team was just very, very negatively impacted by this. So it was an unfortunate roster move. Zed was playing well. His slaying numbers were pretty good for a guy who plays his kind of style, but he never got another chance, and they definitely struggled after him. So I think this is one of the worst roster moves of the entire season. Next up, we had Vivid for Cheen. This was way back after Stage 2 ended for LAG. And this does not have much to do with Cheen. It really could have been anybody being in here, and it still would have been a bad roster move. And we all know Vivid was by far LAG's best player for the first 2 stages of the season. They had 5 wins and 9 losses with Vivid in there, so that's not like a great record, but it's way better than their 3-15 they went the rest of the year without him. So they basically won 3 matches over the next 3 stages, 1 match win per stage. I mean, we all know they were bad, but that is terrible. They did have 5 wins with Vivid in there, including 1 over FaZe as well. They also had a top 6 placement at the stage 1 major, and they did not get better than, I think, top 10 the rest of the season. Maybe they had a top 8 in there, I'm not sure. I don't think so. So they definitely had a lot of their team success with Vivid in there. But we all know he didn't really fit the team because he played so fast and the rest of the team played super slow. And that was more their fault than his fault. They should have been playing faster. He shouldn't have been playing slower. But whatever the case was, they did not like the fit. I mean, and part of it too was he didn't want to be there. So they didn't really have a choice. They didn't make this roster move because they thought Cheen would make them better. They made it because Vivid wanted out. And I don't know how you could blame him after he was playing by far the best and really had no help on that entire team. But then when you think about Cheen specifically, he was kind of an odd selection because of the roles on that team. So basically, Silly had to move over to an SMG role, which was unfortunate, one, because it was just not his thing. As we saw, he played absolutely awful on the SMG, but also because he was playing pretty well on the Flex AR role. He was probably their second best player behind Vivid in the first 2 stages of the season. So overall, it was like an unfortunate move for everybody involved. Cheen was put into a really bad spot. He should have never been on that team with those roles. He played well, but the roles didn't make sense. And also for Vivid, it was bad because he was their best player. They needed him. They didn't have him, and they got terrible to end the season. So this is definitely one of the worst roster moves of the season, maybe even the worst. And this one really came full circle because Cheen for Vivid might have been the worst roster move of the entire season, but it also might not have even been LAG's worst roster move of the entire season. They made 2 roster moves this year, and both of them were among the worst in the entire league. At the start of Stage 5, we all know Mental replaced Cheen, and he played really, really poorly. And I don't even blame him for that. I blame the team around him. He really never had any chance to succeed. He was put into an absolutely horrible situation. But Cheen was their best player at the time. So LAG, again, they made 2 roster moves this year, and both times they replaced who was their best player at the time. And this one did not work out either. I mean, they were terrible to end the year. By far the worst team in the league in Stage 12. I don't even think it was close. Or in Stage 5, excuse me. I said 12 because they were the 12th best team. But they were awful. There's no doubt about that. And also, I don't really like the roster move because I think it would have made more sense for LAG to bring more of their Academy team members on board. They only brought Mental on board, but they had Mox sitting down there. They had Exceed and Nero sitting down there. I think Nero would have made a lot of sense to bring up, but Mox as well. If you're going to try to get a look at your Academy guys, you might as well get a look at all of them, not just one of them. It would have made more sense because I'm sure they knew that Silly, Assault, and Apathy probably were not a part of their plans moving forward for the 2022 season. So they should have got a look at those young guys, but they elected not to. They just elected to put Mental in there for Cheen, dropped their best player, and once again, that did not work out. So 2 for 2 for LAG this year on really bad roster moves. Next up, we have Fellow for Hook, and this one, when you give it proper context, I mean, the logic behind it makes a little bit of sense, but the roster move itself was just very unsuccessful, and there's really no way to deny that. So with Hook this year in the first 2 stages of the year, Dallas was 12-7 total in their matches that they played. They also got second at the Stage 1 major and third at the Stage 2 major. So overall, pretty successful. They didn't win anything, but they won a lot of matches and they had some good placements with Hook in there. And they struggled a little bit towards the end of Stage 2, but by no means were they bad. And Hook played poorly in Stage 2, but he was like the best player in the world in Stage 1. He had a little bit of a down Stage 2, but overall, I thought, it made sense to keep him because they were having a lot of success as a team. Instead, we all know there were some issues there. I don't really have to get into that in this video because it's not about that. But they brought Fellow in there. They went 2-4 in matches with Fellow. They played one major. They appeared in one major, and they got top 8 at that major. So, I mean, right there, that's all you have to know. The team was much worse with Fellow in there instead of Hook. That's just the facts. They tell you that by the placements and the team record. Also, it made the roles weird because Illy had to play an SMG alongside Shotzi, and Illy was really bad in that SMG role. Like, he was one of the worst SMGs in the league. Towards the end of the year, he switched back to the AR and he got better, but when he was on that SMG, he really struggled, and they really struggled. Now, again, the context is important because we all know by now they were trying to add Clayster to the team back then, so it made sense to bring in Fellow because they were planning to have Clayster in there who would have been on an AR role, and Illy would have had to run the SMG role alongside Shotzi. So it makes sense now, but at the time it did not make any sense, and it definitely affected their team because they were terrible with Fellow in there for that one major. They turned it around in Stage 4 and Stage 5 when they got Vivid, but this was a very dark period in the Dallas Empire 2021 season, and I think it had a lot to do with this roster move. Last but definitely not least, we have when Hook replaced TJ Halley during Stage 3 for the LA Thieves. And if you would have told me during Stage 1 that Hook for TJ would actually be a downgrade for a team, I would have called you crazy, but that's exactly what happened here. When TJ was in the lineup in Stage 3 for LA Thieves, they were 3-1. Their only loss was a 3-2 loss to the Atlanta FaZe, so a very close loss to the best team in the league. And then they were also coming off of a 3-1 victory over Optic Chicago. So they were looking good. I mean, they had their winners bracket spot for the next major secured. Their team was looking sharp. Then they put in Hook, and I guess the logic was probably to raise the team's ceiling because Hook's ceiling is definitely higher than TJ's. We can all agree on that. Now, maybe TJ's better at search, but in terms of slaying and in terms of respawns and just killing potential, Hook can make your lineup better. And we did not see that version. We saw the floor instead of the ceiling because the floor was definitely lowered. They finished the Stage 3 1-3, including, I believe, a top 8 placement at the major. It was just not good. TJ, again, he was not slaying out of his mind. He was not making crazy plays, but he was definitely their glue, and it showed when he was out of there. And also, when you think about it, this move got even worse in hindsight because of the issues Hook had later on at Major 4 with his COVID test issue, his teammates questioning his drive to compete, all of that stuff. So basically, I guess, like, this move sort of opened Pandora's box, and once that can of worms was let loose, it really could never get put away because they were just issue after issue with Hook. It was unfortunate for him because he started the year so strong like we were just talking about, but it got worse as the season went on. This move was bad for LA Thieves. They had a lot of roster moves this year. This one, you would have thought it made a lot of sense, and you would have thought it should make their team better, but it did not. It aged really poorly. The team got worse, and the team sort of never really recovered from this mess the rest of the season. It was just a disaster from here on out. That's going to do it for the video. If you enjoyed, definitely leave a like down below. Leave a comment as well with your thoughts on the worst roster move of the season, and also subscribe to the channel as well if you want to see more videos like this one from me in the future. I appreciate all of your support so very much. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a good day today, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.